Welcome to the Couch GM podcast, part of the Couch Scouts family of podcasts. A GM can't do his job without good scouts, but scouting is only half the battle. I'm your host, Skip Newton. Alongside is my co-host, Matt Cooper. Matt, good to see you again. We are just a shade over 3 weeks from the NFL draft.
Yeah, that is crazy. And here at the Couch Scouts podcast, that means we are in full rookie grind mode. I mean, we've been going since December, and we haven't slowed down. If anything, we've sped up. Where it's like, man, we got to get more prospects per week to get where we need to be by the finish line. So lots of scouting going on around here. Not an easy time of the year, but a fun time of the year.
I think it's great to do a lot of that work, the last couple weeks of March and then really ramp up in April because you have as much information as possible, right? I mean, you know the results from the combine, results from pro days, any other, whispers we're hearing, rumors or such. It all kind of gets itself out there. So I think it helps as analysts be as prepared as possible to give your opinions. The film breakdown episodes you guys are doing are outstanding. For those of you that are new to this podcast feed, welcome, and be sure to go back and check out past episodes. It really is worth the time because you guys get into great depth, and I love the fact too that you have three guys doing separate analysis, and yet when you come together in the podcast, so frequently you guys are aligned with what you're seeing. There
Mhm.
I have yet to really hear one where you guys are completely on different ends of the spectrum on a
It
prospect.
happens from time to time, but I will say I feel much more confident in my evaluations when we do all agree. Um, but yeah, I'll add to what you said and say I think it's a great point that now we have more information than we did in December, and so actually these last couple of weeks on our main show podcast we're we're putting a pause on the Inside the Prospect series. Not a pause. We're basically done with it. I think we've got maybe one more of those to do. And instead of, we had talked about doing a couple more of like lower tier guys. But we've hit most of the big names, and it's like it just feels flat at this point to finish out with like, oh, we're gonna talk about whatever. I don't want to name a name, but like somebody that's probably going to be a third round rookie pick. Like it just feels like it's flat. But instead, what we're going to do these next couple of weeks leading up to the draft, we're starting a new series. We're calling it the Second Look series. And so we're going to go back and take another look at some of these big names that we hit early on before we had as much information, particularly some guys that we are way off consensus on. Either we're way higher or we're way lower. I always like to go back and take another look and feel really confident if I'm going to be that far off consensus. So we're going to be going back and taking another look at guys like Caleb Johnson, at guys like Matthew Golden, um, Cam Scatterbu, because we're really high on him and, above consensus on him. And so yeah, it's going to be fun, I think, over the next couple of weeks to go back and take another look at some of those guys that we hit months ago, refresh ourselves like either, oh, this is why I loved this guy, or maybe, oh, I missed that. And it's going to be really interesting to see if our views change at all, or if it just kind of solidifies how we feel about that prospect going into draft season.
Nice. I love that. And again, that's a sneak preview of what's coming up. Of course, today we're going to do a first round of a rookie mock. We don't want to rush through this, so we're just going to do one round today. We'll do round two at a minimum next week, but we're going to kick this off with a Superflex PPR. I didn't indicate tight end premium, and that's fine. I mean, we're still going to look at some of these top tight ends, but
Mm-hmm.
Matt, of course, I like to give you as the co-host the number one pick, and I wrote in a name, but was the wrong one. So who did you end up taking at number one?
Yeah, you wrote in Jordan James, and I said, I can see that you already have listened to our podcast from last night. Uh, somebody I woke up this morning and checked our Discord, and somebody shout out Kabir Cart. It was like 5:30 in the morning. He must have already had listened to the podcast from last night, and he said, I hope nobody from his family finds that podcast.
It's it has
It's
happened to
like,
people we know in this
yeah,
industry.
it has happened to me. So, um, yeah. Anyway, so Jordan James is not who I took at the 101. I took Ashton Genty, running back out of Boise State, and that is extremely chalk at this point for good reason. And I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on it. He is an absolutely elite running back prospect. He's basically a lock to be a first round pick in the NFL draft, and he's going to be a cornerstone for your dynasty roster for a long time.
Yeah, there's nothing more to really get into, but I mean, he's such a high-end prospect, and I think it's important to stress that even in a super flex league, you you have no worries taking the slam dunk safe pick who could also end up being a stud. And even if you're sitting at the 101 and you earned it because your team was horrible last season, and maybe you don't have good quarterbacks, I'm I'm stressing to people, don't reach on a quarterback in a bad quarterback year. It's just not a good strategy to go with. You draft the best player available, and when you have, like you said, a slam dunk here with Genty at one, just take him, and you can figure it out later. But if he does what we're all expecting him to do, his value goes up. You can always trade him for a good quarterback later, or you have options. I mean, he's going to help you become a better team. So I think that's a great pick there. I'm going to stay what I think is going to end up being pretty chalk as well, and I'm going with wide receiver Torrey McMillan out of Arizona State. I
Arizona.
this is what's that? Or Arizona?
Arizona.
Sorry, I wrote
Arizona. Yeah.
my bad.
All good.
Um, my thought on him is I think maybe there's some prospect fatigue, or people are over analyzing and overthinking McMillan. The guy was an absolute beast for the better part of the last couple of seasons, and he does so many things so well on the football field, and he wins, and he doesn't need to be that kind of guy that's 5'11" to 6'1", that easily break down their cornerback or their opponent with these super crisp and sick routes. That's not the only way wide receivers can win, and I think McMillan is going to be able to win and make plays in the NFL in different ways, because he's tall, he's got enough speed, he adjusts well to the ball, he can get open. I mean, it's not like he's constantly got a guy in his hip. And I
Yeah.
the more I think about it, the more and honestly, there's only one other player that I think I would seriously consider at 102, and you jumped all over him at 103, but I love McMillan at 102.
Yeah, so I'll talk about McMillan for a second because I do think prospect fatigue is probably a part of the equation. I also think there's a fatigue with this archetype of the big-bodied X receiver. It just seems like the NFL is more and more shifting towards these smaller guys, and obviously, maybe years ago, people mostly played in standard fantasy leagues, but PPR is kind of the rule of the day. It's very few leagues that aren't at least half PPR, if not full. Most of them are full. So yeah, just these guys that do more close to the line of scrimmage rather than being that downfield boundary threat, rack up more volume than a lot of these X receivers do. It's kind of in vogue, and frankly, I think people have been burned. Not even burned necessarily. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. was so hyped that it felt like his rookie season was a disappointment. It really was a pretty respectable rookie
It
season.
was a very respectable season.
Yeah, more than yeah. But then you had Neighbors, who is that smaller route runner, PPR, yak like archetype, and he blew up. And relatively speaking, Harrison and Odunze, who were these big-bodied X types, felt like they had disappointing rookie seasons compared to expectations. So I think some of it's to do with Tet, some of it's to do with just the way the NFL is trending and archetypes and that type of thing. I like Tet. I will say I don't have him in the same tier of caliber of prospect as those guys that I just named. So Neighbors, Harrison, Odunze, I had 80 plus in my film grades. I've got Tet right around a 78. So still a very respectable grade, not quite in that elite territory. And I like Ted. I think he's got some things to work on. I was a little bit surprised when we did the film analysis that his release against press coverage wasn't better. Um, I thought he kind of just he didn't have the great footwork. He just kind of ran in a straight line and bullied people, and that was a concern to me, specifically against press coverage for a guy who's going to play X at the next level. So he's not a perfect prospect, but he's a very good wide receiver prospect that I think is going to be a fantasy starter for a long time. And yeah, I get why people are maybe a little bit hesitant on him. And I do think compared to most years, he's maybe not quite as strong of a wide receiver one in the class as some other years. But he is a great wide receiver prospect for sure. So with that being said, for me at 103, I took Omarion Hampton, running back out of UNC, and you know, by all accounts, it seems like he's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. The hit rate on running backs who go in the first round of the NFL draft for fantasy is very, very high. He feels like a very safe pick, but I also think he's got a ton of upside. I mean, you're talking about a 220 plus pound back that also has a third down skill set, has everything that you need to be a bell cow. And if a team invests a first round pick on him, it's probably to be a bell cow. So the fantasy upside there, especially in a league where we don't have very many bell cow running backs, three down workhorse types, he can be that, and the fantasy upside is really high. He's an incredible tackle breaker. He's got great explosiveness for being as big as he is. You know, not the most laterally quick, elusive guy, but he doesn't have to be. Like he's just this north south beast of a runner who, you know, he's got the big play threat. He's got the ability to pound you in the red zone, you know, keep the chains moving. He does everything. So I love getting Omarion Hampton here. I think he's going to be a really good piece for your dynasty roster.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, if he, you know, he gets first round draft capital, Genty gets first round draft capital. They both get the a significant percentage of the touches their rookie seasons, pretty much from the start. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the top scoring running back in this class this year. Not at all, to be honest. I mean, obviously situations can dictate a lot of that, but like you said, he has all the tools, and this
Mm-hmm.
is this is a deep and talented running back class, and I don't think it's just the Genty and then okay, a bunch of guys that we like that are good. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
it's no, there are
There's
there
some
are
studs. Like he would be
there are some
RB1 a lot of years.
yes, there are some guys that can be studs for years, and Hampton definitely fits that description. At 104, I think this is an easy pick too. I'll take the 101 quarterback Cam Ward, and I know he's not as sexy as the guys last year. A couple of which really had good seasons. A couple more we're still excited about. I mean, we can see good things coming from last year's quarterback class, really across the board. But Cam Ward, he's got a lively arm. He can move. He's got some things he has to figure out, I think, from a mental processing standpoint, you know, get smarter, really educate himself on whichever system he gets in, know when to take chances, et cetera, et cetera. But I love the talent, and it looks like he's going to get the
Mm-hmm.
draft capital. So again, at 104 in a super flex,
Yeah.
I feel really good about taking him here. I think it's worth a shot.
And if you haven't gone back and listened, I was actually out of town this week. I wasn't on the episode, but Rupert and Jackson had our quarterback guru John Fosbury on for a quarterback showdown where they talked in detail about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders on that podcast, and I thought they did a great job breaking it down. So definitely for a more in-depth breakdown, onward, specifically from Foz, a guy who coaches football and understands defenses and schemes and how the quarterback should be reading and processing everything. I thought they had great insights there, so definitely give that a listen. Um, at 1-5, forgive me, I'm going to camp here for a minute and maybe soapbox a little bit. I went with my guy Travis Hunter, wide receiver, Colorado, and yes, I did say wide receiver. Um, I did not put wide receiver slash cornerback. All right, maybe, but I'm planting my flag. All right, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So the way that I do my rankings, uh, it's like if I was on the clock today in a draft before the NFL draft happens, before we have this information, and I absolutely could not trade out of the pick. I had no picks after. This is it. I got one shot and I got a gun to my head. Who am I taking? That's how I do my rankings. And for me, I'm taking Travis Hunter right here at 1-5. In fact, I had him at 3 in my rankings. So, like, if you were not a part of the draft and I just had 1, 2, 3 all to myself, I would have gone Genty, Hampton, Hunter. And so it's nice that I still got all three picking here at 3 and 5. But yeah, Travis Hunter, I don't know. Have you seen Matt Harmon's RP profile that he put out on him this
I
week?
did not.
Uh, so reception perception. Shout out Matt Harmon. He's the GOAT at wide receiver evaluation. We've been saying this about Hunter since January, but it's always vindicating when he says the same thing. Makes me feel much more confident in my take. But Travis Hunter, he had the coveted all green route tree on Harmon's chart. His success rates against man zone and press were absurd. So he had a 92nd percentile success rate against man coverage, a 97th percentile success rate against zone, and a 97th percentile success rate against press. And so 22.6% of his routes he was pressed, and he beat it over 84% of the time. That is nuts. So, as a separator, as a pure route runner, this is a guy that has only played the position for 2 seasons. He's so raw, and yet his success rate versus man coverage was the 5th highest mark among Power 5 prospects in RP history. It was better than guys like Devontae Smith and Chris Olave versus man coverage. That's nuts. His success rate versus zone trails only Calvin Ridley as the 2nd highest ever among Power 5 prospects. And his success rate versus press is the number 1 best among prospects who faced at least 22% of their routes faced press. So, elite separator. Physical tools that you just can't teach. Such fluid hips, easy accelerator, fast down the field. He had incredible ball skills as well. He's fantastic after the catch. I mean, this guy, I just don't think people fully appreciate how elite he is as a wide receiver prospect. I have him graded higher than I had Malik Neighbors last year, and he's only played the position 2 years. That's just nuts. And you don't get a guy that good, like a Malik Neighbors level prospect, and then just be like, nah, we're not using him at wide receiver. We're good. Like
Yep.
he
I think
he's too good.
the risk is, and I think this is why he could easily go anywhere from, I don't know, third in rookie picks, maybe down, at the end of the first round, is he's also an elite cornerback. And
Mm-hmm.
in the NFL, elite cornerbacks are harder to find. And the shutdown corner is so few and far between that I could see a team saying, you are absolutely going to play some wide receiver, but the key word there is some, because we need you playing cornerback 100%. And then we'll put some packages together, and it'll lead to some games where he has, a great game, 4 or 5 catches, he busts a few, and all of a sudden he's got 80 plus, 100 yards, maybe a score or two. But he's going to have other games where maybe he doesn't see the field much. I think it all depends on the team and how he can hold up. And so that's the concern, because everything you said about him as a prospect, I agree with 100%. I mean, I saw it last year when I was watching him play. I was like, this guy
Mm,
is a
he's
phenomenal wide
special.
receiver. Like he just gets open. He makes hard catches look easy. Yeah, he's special. That's a great way to put it. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean, who
mean,
knows?
I think I appreciate you playing the devil's advocate on it. I think it is important to hear the perspective. Obviously, that's what the risk is. I acknowledge the risk. Um, I don't know how to evaluate the cornerback position. So
Right.
I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, I watched 8 games of tape of him at cornerback and, he's just such a better wide receiver." Like I don't know. He could be elite at cornerback too. I guess, I hear that he's pretty good there, right?
Yeah.
Um, so obviously your take is contingent on, if he is that elite lockdown, Darrell Revis type of cornerback, that obviously has significant value too. I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I just don't know. I don't know how to evaluate defensive back. I know he's an elite wide receiver prospect, and uh, for me, the risk, like for me, he's way higher in my film grade than Tet McMillan is. Like he's a different tier. He's a different caliber of wide receiver prospect. He's by far my wide receiver one, and so I'm just willing to gamble. I'm willing to gamble because I think he has first, second round startup pick type of upside. I had a pre NFL draft, uh, rookie draft already, and I got Travis Hunter at 202, which felt like amazing value to me. I think it's just going to be interesting to see when his name gets called on draft night. Does the team announce him as a defensive back or as a wide receiver? Because I think
Right.
if the team announces him as a wide receiver, this 1.5 will be chalk, maybe even higher.
Oh
But if
yeah.
he gets announced as a defensive back, I think you're going to get incredible value on him in rookie drafts, and I'm willing to take the gamble. So obviously this is in a vacuum. I wanted to take this opportunity to plant my flag because you don't have trades in a mock draft. If I'm in a real draft, I'm trying what I can right now to trade back, or if I have another pick later, like say I have 1.5 and 110. Maybe I take somebody else here at 5 and trust that he's probably going to be there at 10 based on ADP. Like I'm in favor of trying to get yourself value that way and pay attention to ADP trends and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, gun to my head, if I've only got the one pick and I can't get a trade done, this is the guy that I think is the value here, and I'm going to stick to my guns on it.
I love it. And our listeners need to stick to their guns and find the value that is at the Couch Scouts family. You should be joining us. We provide league winning analysis and tools, help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Rookie content is our bread and butter. We release bonus podcasts every week just for members. We break down some of the bigger sleeper names you will need to know. Again, the draft is just 3 weeks away, which means your rookie drafts are probably a week or two after that. So you want to know who those sleepers are. Of course, we have the initial volume one guide out there of the rookie guide, over 35 rookies already there, on our way to 70 prospects with in-depth film analysis, grades, and pre and post draft rankings. I will tell you right now, I remember that from last year. I found that extremely helpful. It's just such an easy tool to say, this is where you guys had them before the NFL draft, and this is where you had them afterwards, and you can see right there which guys moved up and down based on draft capital landing spot. I found that to be one of the most useful things. I mean, the analysis and everything else was great, of course, but man, when you're doing kind of that post draft work, I loved that last year. So I highly recommend that. It is the ultimate cheat sheet for dominating your rookie draft. You can get access to all that and more at couchscouts.com today for as low as $5 a month, or save 15% with an annual subscription. That is couchscouts.com. All right, this ends the Travis Hunter portion of the podcast. We're going to move on to the rest of the first round. And I'm going to stick at wide receiver and go with another guy that everyone probably knows because he's been, I believe, one of the highest prospects at wide receiver that we've had since his rookie or his freshman year, I should say. Luther Burden. I mean, everyone was excited about him. Had a
Five
solid
star.
freshman year, 5-star, a huge breakout sophomore season. Came back to earth a little bit last year, but again, I think there's more prospect fatigue here, and I don't want to overthink it with Luther Burden. I think if I can get him, and I'm pretty sure I probably will be able to get him maybe in the middle of my first round. If I'm sitting there at this spot, I'm happy with Burden. I think there's a high likelihood he's a first round pick, mid day one, and that usually means good things. And I like his talent.
Yeah, for sure. I like Luther Burden. As far as film grade, I've got him very like within a point of Ted McMillan. I think they're both 78 point something, so it's less than a point difference between them. I've got them in the same tier of prospect. And again, I think Luther Burden's archetype is kind of more the way that the league is trending to get the ball in his hands on easy layup stuff close to the line of scrimmage, and he's so good after the catch, and he's going to rack up those receptions and the PPR points. I don't think he's an elite route runner. I think he's got a lot of room to develop there. But I think ceiling, like he could be a better version of Debo Samuel because he has that like thick build where he can handle carries and he's great after the catch and he can handle kind of the beating, the in and out of a role like that. But he's got the upsides, I think, to be more because I think he might be more athletic than Debo. I think he's got a little bit looser hips and a little bit more upside as a route runner than him. One interesting note, so Matt Harmon also released a profile on Burden, and he's really connected, in the NFL draft world more so than a lot of fantasy guys. And he says there's folks, this is a quote from his article. There are folks in the league with real questions about how he approached the position and handled his final collegiate season. And so, he makes the note essentially that this is why you're seeing not just fantasy people cool on him, but a lot of NFL draft people too. And more of the mock drafts that have come out later, you're seeing him potentially not be a first round pick in the NFL draft anymore, which I'm interested to see how that plays out because I certainly think he's a first round talent. So I have no problem with you taking him here. I've got him up there in my rankings as well. I think it's a solid pick.
All right, 107. You are up. We are in the second half of the first round, brought to you by the University of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, so I took Ohio State Buckeyes running back Travion Henderson, and I was torn on this. You mentioned that you did not list it as a tight end premium, and that factored for me here because I think there's a tier of 4 or 5 guys that I've got really close together in my rankings. And in a tight end premium league, I might have gone Warren here. But since you did not list it as tight end premium, I went with Travion Henderson, a little bit on the thin side. I think he was like 202 at the combine. I'm not overly worried about that. He's an explosive player. He's got great vision. He's an incredible pass protector, very versatile and a weapon in the pass catching game. Can make guys miss, has a little bit of power to his game, like a super well rounded player. And I have a hard time seeing him get out of like the early second round of the NFL draft. So I think he's going to get plenty of opportunity and touches at the NFL level. So love the prospects. Just another one of these great running backs in this great running back class. I was happy to get him here at 7.
Yeah, he's explosive and he has big time high upside. So I love that pick. I can tell you right now, if this was a tight end premium, I would have absolutely jumped all over Tyler Warren at 106 instead of Luther Burden. That would have been a slam dunk for me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to Warren in a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to stick with Ohio State. Emeka Egbuka, another wide receiver for me. I'm going wide receiver heavy in a draft where I've talked about how I'm going to take a lot of running backs, but this is kind of how the the board is falling to me, and I I think Emeka Egbuka could be one of those guys where people are kind of sleeping on him, and he's going to be that guy that just he's getting open and getting a lot of targets, and all of a sudden people are wondering like, wow, why did he constantly go 108, 109, 110 in rookie drafts when he's going to be immediate, a wide receiver 2, I think is in his rookie season is very possible. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
sure he can be a wide receiver like his team's alpha wide receiver, but he can be that high
Mhm.
end wide receiver too. You know, the T Higgins to a Jamar Chase type situation. I like Igbuka a lot, and depending on where he falls, I think he could have immediate value and return if he gets in a system where he's on the field from the start.
Yeah, I do too. I like Ibuka a lot, and I'm glad that you mentioned like not sure if he can be a wide receiver one because this came up in our Discord this week, and I think people sometimes get so twisted up in their idea of what is upside at the wide receiver position. And it's weird because on one hand, I can say people are scared off by these big bodied X receiver types, but at the same time, size speed is something that people are so quick to tie to upside. And so a guy like Abuka that primarily played slot in college and was, you know, more of this short to intermediate, Mr. Reliable, not the most explosive athlete, not the most flashy guy. People will go, oh, he doesn't have upside. But I'm telling you, like, there's no reason that this guy can't have an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of production. Like, that's a ceiling outcome. I'm not necessarily predicting that, but that's plenty of upside.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many guys in fantasy that's like, are elite fantasy producers that are not your AJ Brown or DK Metcalf. Even like, there's plenty of guys who are better in fantasy than DK, even though DK's that size speed freak that everybody's chasing, right? Uh, Route running, he's one of the best route runners in this class. And if you're an elite route runner and you're getting open and you're earning targets, you're going to rack up points. And I
Yep.
think he's got plenty of fantasy upside to be a wide receiver one for your fantasy football team.
So
So,
you would have taken him over Luther Burden for sure then.
uh, same tier for me. I think that's one that like the draft might be a tiebreaker. Like right now, I think I have Luther Burden slightly ahead of Abuka primarily because Burden is so good after the catch.
Okay.
Um, but I think Abuka is a better route runner, and I think if you told me that Abuka has a longer and more productive fantasy career, it would not surprise me in the slightest. Particularly if you get to the draft and Abuka's like a high first round pick and Burden falls because of some of these concerns about his attitude at Missouri or whatever you want to fill in the blank. Um, you know, landing spot matters, all that kind of stuff. But I definitely think they're the same tier of prospect for sure.
All right. Who do you got at the 109?
I've got Tyler Warren. So I mentioned I was kind of torn last pick, and so when he fell back to me, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna snap up Tyler Warren. He's my tight end one. He's really really good. We talked about him on the show a couple weeks ago, and he is, you know, he's a really good blocker, which in some ways can almost be a detriment to you from a fantasy perspective. That the comp that we gave on the show was George Kittle, who is such a good blocker that he doesn't run quite as many routes as you want him to, but when he is out there running routes, he's fantastic at it. So Tyler Warren's a great athlete. He's fantastic after the catch. He's a smash mouth player. Coach is going to love him. Lock for first round draft capital. Um, Great prospect. So yeah, Tyler Warren, feel pretty confident he's going to be a long term starter at tight end for you.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I just the more I hear about him, the more I watch him, the more I'm like, oh my god, I love this guy. I think he's going to be fantastic. Like you said, coaches are going to love him, and he's gonna be that guy that just instantly makes the offense better, no matter what he's doing, but just being on the field. At 110, back to Ohio State, running back Quinshon Judkins, another big bodied, at least probably a guy that can be a two down rusher for his team, which means he's
Mm-hmm.
getting the ball over 50% of the time. We've seen him consistently put out great production in college. He was absolutely outstanding his freshman season, and he's been just fantastic ever since. I only in this year with Genty and with Henderson and with Hampton are you getting a guy I think like Judkins this late in a rookie. I mean,
Mhm.
110, it speaks to the talent and depth. I think he is one of those guys, like I said earlier, that he could end up being an absolute stud in the NFL. So I felt really good about taking him here. I felt like for me, this is a tier break at running back. Like, okay, the top four are kind of my solidified top four, and then the guys after that. So, and I
Mhm.
know I know you love your guy that we'll talk about next week, but
Yes.
I love Quinshan.
Yeah, Judkins is, I was very surprised by the combine, I'll say that. Like, not that I thought he was unathletic, but for him to come out and run basically a 4.4 um, at his size at 220 pounds, and the explosiveness numbers were there too, with the broad jump and the vertical jump and all that. Like, he blew the combine away and ended up as like a 9+ RAS guy, which I just was not expecting based off of the tape eval. He's a little bit tight hipped, not the most elusive guy in the world. And my main concern is the pass catching. Um, Not that he's terrible at it, like on a pass fail spectrum, he probably gets a pass. Um, but if he's on a team with somebody else that does it better, I could easily see him ceding third down work, which limits fantasy upside significantly. So, if you look back historically over many, many years, how many guys can you name that were like really elite fantasy producers that didn't catch passes? You got your Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb. Not that many of them though. Like, the list is pretty short. So, um, yeah, I don't hate Judkins at all. He's actually going to be one of the guys that's on our second look series, and it's not because we hated him. We just were like a little bit lower than consensus, and so we want to go back and take another look and see what we see. Um, that being said, at 11, I took Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. I have him in the same tier as Tyler Warren. In a lot of drafts, you'll see Tyler Warren going as high as 5, and you'll see Loveland dropping as low as like early to mid second. And in that case, give me the value on Loveland, because I
Yep.
think they're the same tier of prospect. Loveland, I think, is a better route runner than Tyler Warren, maybe a little bit faster than Tyler Warren. Um, Not quite as physical, not quite as good after the catch, but so they're different stylistically, but they're both really, really good tight end prospects, and they're both probably going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. And I like Loveland a lot, so I grabbed him here at 111, even in a non-tight end premium. I don't think he should be hitting the second round for people.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, and it's a good tight end class, and we might talk about another one depending on how deep we go, because I think there's one or two at least guys that could make a fantasy difference on rosters. Maybe not year one, but sometimes tight ends need to develop. So to round things out here in the first round, the last pick at 12, I'm going with Jalen Noel, wide receiver, Iowa State. The more I am watching and hearing about this guy, the more I'm loving Noel, and I think he's one of those guys that maybe at the start of the process, back in January, he was he was a few analysts sleeper and one of their top sleeper picks. He's not a sleeper anymore. I mean, this guy is probably going to go top 50 in the NFL draft, and that means this is about where you can expect him to go in rookie drafts. I mean, he might go a couple picks higher. He might drop early second round, but I don't think you should wait long. I mean, elite route running and acceleration. The speed is fantastic. He's not huge, 5'10" and change, a buck 94. But like you said earlier, those kinds of wide receivers are doing just fine in the NFL. They're getting open. They're getting open consistently. They're getting a lot of targets. They're earning those targets. I think Noel could be that guy in the NFL. And if I'm at the back end of a first round, I will probably be smashing him a lot in rookie drafts, especially if again he gets that anticipated top 50 draft capital, so even if it's early to mid day 2, I'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, he's definitely not a sleeper anymore, and one could even argue that he's become overrated. I I'll just say we covered him on a bonus podcast, and we like to keep that stuff for the members. He's not a my guy in this class, but he is on our second look series. Rupert, one of the reasons he's on our second look, not only is because we're a little lower than consensus, Rupert was high on him, and Jackson and I weren't as much. And so, we respect him enough that to go take a second look in that way too. Somebody in our Discord this week, who probably is listening right now, asked, like, what's the difference between him and Lad McConkey? Because I think they're just as good. And for me personally, I've got a 10-point difference between them on their prospect scores tape grade from where McConkey was pre-draft last year to where I have Noel right now. I just think, I saw Noel separating deep on deep routes, posts, goes, deep outs, corners, these types of things. And he was good, because he had so much speed at like sinking his hips and stopping for the comeback route. So a lot of that like vertical route tree, he was really good at. The horizontal, like in breaking, digs, slants, outs. I just didn't see that. I didn't see what I saw out of McConkey. That's for sure. Like that nuance to just drop his hips, snap out of a route, create tons of separation, get wide open. To where I think he's going to be this PPR guy that's racking. Like I think he's going to be a deep threat, and so I'm concerned about the fantasy upside there. I'm not as high on him right now as most people. Again, we are going to take a second look. So, for me personally, I would not take him in the first round of a rookie draft, but you're not alone there. I mean, that he is getting a ton of hype. He's definitely not a sleeper. You're right about that much. So,
All right, there you go. Little disagreement on the value there, but that's why you listen. It's good stuff, and that's what we expect from our awesome analyst Matt Cooper. That is it for round one. So just to remind everybody real quick, it was Ashton Genty, Tet McMillan, Amarian Hampton, Cam Ward, the top four. Then Travis Hunter, Luther Burden, Travion Henderson, and Mecca Egbuka, 5 through 8. And we finished up with Tyler Warren, Quinshawn Judkins, Colson Loveland, and Jalen Noel at the end of the first round. We will be back next week for round two, maybe even 2 and 3. It all depends on how much analysis we want to do on each prospect. Sometimes we have to drag it out a little bit. We don't want these things to go an hour plus. So hopefully you enjoyed this and you'll come back next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Couch GM podcast. If you haven't done so already, please check the show notes and join our free community Discord. It's always hopping with awesome trade advice, news reactions, and more. And leave us a 5-star review on whichever podcast app you use. For Matt, I am Skip. Have an awesome weekend, everyone. Take care.